Welcome to Retire Hour, the weekly show discussing income planning, investing, tax planning, estate planning, and Medicare. Complete retirement education. Hear from our financial advisors, CPA, estate planning attorney, and Medicare advisor every week. This is Retire Hour.
Welcome into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement, and it's changing rapidly. I want to talk about what's coming up later in the show. We'll be talking with Mark Benefill with Market Medicare Advisors, talking about how these layoffs in the government we think are to blame for people starting to have a little longer on turning on their Medicare and Social Security. It's now going to about from 30 days up to about 60 or 75 days. You won't want to miss what Mark has to say about that and what tips we'll give you so you can stay ahead of the curve there. One of our estate planning attorneys, Alex Robinson, he'll be sharing with us 3 stories of people that didn't have the right plan in place when it came time for their estate plan and what havoc was caused there. You won't want to miss that on how you can avoid that as well. And then finally, Joshua Sikora, CPA, lead tax advisor with Market Tax Services. He'll be talking about how when we did tax planning with our clients, now we're doing their tax preparation and filing their return. And he'll be sharing with us some of the things there and when and maybe how to make the roulette wheel stop. I will be curious to know what he means by that coming up here later in the show. But I want to begin with kind of just a message to you, all our listeners and viewers out there. However you watch or get this program, whether it's on the radio, whether it's our podcasts, whether it's our channel on YouTube, or whether it's Cox 22, however, there's many, many ways we distribute this show. I want to tell you, I'm optimistic for the U.S. economy, but I want to point out that tariffs are adding a lot of uncertainty right now. In fact, having even the tax code be a little uncertain next year and having that out there where it's not been passed yet, that's adding a lot of uncertainty to the economy right now. And we heard it in President Trump's speech this week. We see that the administration feels that deregulation and cutting government wastes, fraud, and abuse will have a positive impact on the country. But you heard him himself in his own words this week say, bear with me, it's going to be a little disturbance, short-term pain for long-term gains. And I want to ask you guys, if you're nearing retirement, or maybe you've just recently retired, or maybe you've been retired for a while, is this something you really want to subject yourself to, all the ups and all the downs that the market can give? Because we saw this week that with tariffs, they can cause turmoil. The VIX is very volatile, and the market's just getting a little mushy, okay? I guess that's TT, VV, and MM. So you want to make sure you have a strategy to make sure you can participate in those gains, but maybe not participate in all those downs. And if you don't have a plan, it can cost you big time. And again, hear my heart. I'm very optimistic for our economy, but I do think, and I've been saying it for weeks now, I do think the next 12 to 18, maybe even 24 months is going to be quite a ride. And if you don't have a strategy, do me a favor, reach out and give us a call at 833-MAG Report. That phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. We'd love to have a 15-minute chat with you. I'll tell you a story about Zach and Chastity this week that I met with. They came in because they listened to us on the radio, and he's nearing retirement, and he said, Matt, I'm concerned. In fact, he told me he voted for Trump as well, but he said he's concerned about how this is going to have an impact on his nest egg. And Zach and Charity, they're not the only couple that I've met with over the past couple weeks that are growing more and more concerned by the weeks and days that go on how this reshaping of really our entire political system and government is going to have an impact on them. You heard me mention just a little bit earlier, Mark Benefill is going to be talking to us a little bit later in the show about how this is having already an immediate impact on people that are filing for Medicare. It's delaying their application and taking a little longer. Danny, who's going to come in and talk later, he told me just yesterday that someone he helped walk through filing for Social Security, they still haven't even got their benefits yet. This is changing. And yes, hear me out. I'm optimistic for these changes, but there's going to be a lot of chaos and ripple effects here, I believe, that can happen, and you don't want to get caught up in the wake. like going to the lake and the big boats go by and all that, those big waves go by. You don't want to be that little boat out there and get capsized. And if you're concerned or maybe even have some anxiety, or maybe you're noticing that there is a lot of uncertainty out there. That's probably the best word. A lot of uncertainty. Reach out and give us a call at 833-MAG-REPORT, or go on over to our website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com. We'd love to have a 15-minute chat with you to see if there's anything you could do to still participate if the market's going to make sure it keeps going on. And I hope it does. And I believe, like I said, I'm a big believer in the American economy. But I think as these things get retooled, there's going to be ripple effects. In fact, tell you about someone the other day. I'm going to call him Joe. Joe said, Matt, I'm coming to you because as these tariffs are going to be coming into place, my financial advisor, his old financial advisor, had not been talking to him about, was there any international exposure in his portfolio? And as we're going to retool and try and become, again, I about said a bad word on radio. You can't do that, right? If we're going to be the big boy and become the big driver of the world economy again, there's going to have ripple effects. And do you have international exposure in your portfolio there that might not be the best idea as we're laying on all these tariffs and then more tariffs to come in April with reciprocal tariffs? Take it from me. Did you hear him say in his speech this week, there's going to be a little disturbance? Do you want to have that disturbance in your retirement? Do you want to have that disturbance with your nest egg? I don't think so. A lot of the people I'm talking with, and I know Jonathan has talked with as well, they don't want to have these little disturbances impact them. And if you don't have a plan, again, we'd love to have a 15-minute conversation with you at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or again, that phone number again, 833, the letters MAG. That's not MAGA. That's for Market Advisory Group Report. Or go on over to our website at retirehour.com. Well, stay tuned. We're going to go up to Kansas City and talk with Jonathan McCoy about John and Pam. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. And boy, is it changing fast. We've seen a lot of changes happen here as the new administration and the new government's taken over. But we're now going to go up to Kansas City and talk with Jonathan McCoy, our lead advisor up there in Kansas City. And you've got a story of someone that's actually been working with us for 4 or 5 years now, 6 years now, right? Isn't that true, John and Pam?
Yeah, so we were recently meeting with John and Pam and Kim here, helping them with transition of Pam's health insurance from employer health insurance over to Medicare. She's planning on retiring in the next couple of months. And I think it's an appropriate time to be discussing the conversation that we have with John and Pam because, they've got some of this fear and uncertainty going on around, how long is it going to take to get my Social Security benefits? How long is it going to take? And am I going to be sure that I have that health insurance on the day that I actually need it once I've, retired from my employer plan? And ultimately the concerns also, especially with a lot of the volatility that we've seen in the market recently, of are we going to be okay to start living on some of our retirement funds and resources now that it's just now time and we've got all this uncertainty going on economically and politically? And really the discussion we had with them was, this is why we've had this plan in place and built this plan over the last 6 years to get you prepared for this. And I think the mindset that we work toward as advisors is making sure that people understand that the market can go through a downturn, the economy can go through a slowdown, and it's going to. I mean, whether that happens right around the time that you're retiring or 10 to 15 years after you retire, and when is the worst time for that to happen? Well, ultimately, there is no good time for it to happen. You think about 10, 15 years from now, if we had another 2008 style financial crisis, how much easier is it for you to go and start seeking work if your retirement portfolio value is cut by 30 or 40 or even 50%? We know we've learned these lessons from the market in the past, and the volatility and the political environment that we're going through right now is sort of a reminder, sort of that tap on the shoulder that there is no bad time to put a plan in place to make sure that you've got, as you mentioned, Matt, a way to survive and really thrive through those market downturns And I find that a lot of people are just unaware of what risks they're actually exposed to.
Well,
And I think
you and I talk about this in our income planning class, where
right.
it's will you retire in a bull market, a bear market, or a flat market? And the fact is, you're not really in control of the market. You really need to have control of your assets and your nest egg to whether it's going to be a bear market or a bull market, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because control what you can control. And, a lot of the portfolio design that we go through with our clients is first we talk about the MAG report process and these consultations that we go through with folks. We've got to discover what's happening in your financial situation to begin with. How much money are you expecting to need and everything like that. But once we get back through that, we can start to say, okay, well, if you need, for example, a safer pot of money to be able to live on for a 2 to 3 year market downturn because you don't want to be forced to sell out of those market-based assets that may be a little higher risk, that may take it on the chin a little bit more if we go through, as you mentioned in the president's speech here recently, some of these uneasy and unsettling times, especially from a market performance standpoint. The key point is I think a lot of people are just undereducated and in some cases uneducated on what those options are. We get so stuck to and used to this buy and hold, balanced 60-40 risk portfolio between stocks and bonds. And it feels like there's only a couple of tools at their disposal because a lot of people are only familiar with those investment options that were available in their 401ks. Well, with John and Pam in this circumstance, we were looking at 5 to 6 years ago, this being the end date for Pam and having those alternative income production strategies depending on what the market was doing at the time that she retired. So we didn't have to completely change the game plan right at this most crucial moment of her life when all of this stuff is supposed to come to fruition for her.
What I'm getting here is John and Pam, they started working with us about, you said 5 or 6 years ago,
Right.
and they were planning. They were kind of, to use the airplane metaphor, they were on final approach, okay? And they got the help they needed to figure out what's gonna happen when they want to switch to Medicare, when to take Social Security, how does this income plan look before they retire. And you have those people that are the planners, and I really like those that get in front of the game and they want to figure out what's going on and what they can do. And then you have the people that come in and say, I retired yesterday. What do I need to do? And there's oftentimes a happy medium there, but I'm glad John and Pam were getting the information they needed in advance. You said that she was switching to Medicare and the team was able to help from that. Did she switch to Medicare before she even left her job?
So we started the filing process really literally just in the last 10 days. So that process is in transition right now. Now, Pam specifically is not going to be retiring until closer to the end of April. So that May 1st beginning date, making sure that there's sort of that very clean transition from the end of April to the beginning of May, off of work insurance, onto Medicare. We had been planning for nearly a year in advance for this period of time to make sure that we had enough advance notice. Now, we didn't know what the outcome of the election or the impacts of the slowdown of federal government processing of these applications and things were going to be. But we knew from our Medicare department that we do need to have that advance notice and give the powers that be, or the people that are actually working behind the scenes in these systems, especially in the Medicare offices, the time to process that application. So some of that I think goes back to a lot of the uncertainty that people have around when do we need to take action on these things. And that's the whole reason that we rely on this multifaceted team, both from a tax management, a healthcare management, and investment management standpoint, to make sure that we are keeping an eye on these things for folks, because it's nearly impossible for one individual to do it all by themselves. And being able to leverage these different resources across our team, John and Pam are just a very good example of how that longer window and period of time of planning can be incredibly beneficial, because we knew exactly what to expect. These are things that we've been talking about for a year or two approaching this retirement date.
And guys out there, if you're listening and you're thinking, man, I haven't started planning for retirement, or I haven't figured out how's this transition going to impact going from the private workforce over into retirement and on Medicare and on Social Security. You don't want to let this, again, you don't want to be that person that I was talking about. Well, I just retired yesterday. What do I need to do? You need to put some thought into this, and at bare minimum, 60 to 90 days. And it sounds like Jonathan's echoing some things we're going to be talking with Mark Benefill here in a little bit after the bottom of the break, at the bottom of the hour, about how it's taking longer to turn on Medicare. So normally we've been saying 90 days. Might want to be thinking about 120 days with all the chaos that's going on. And if you're not ready to retire, or if you don't think you're ready to retire and you're uncertain about all the things you need to do, reach out and give us a call at 833-MAG-REPORT. That phone number once more is 833, the letters MAG, stands for Market Advisory Group Report. That's our process that we take people through the retirement evaluation process, other risks and taxes, because you need to be prepared. And if you're not prepared for how even these proposed changes could impact you, furthermore, it would be a great idea to schedule that 15-minute call and chat with us. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with Danny Goolsby with a question we get a lot. How much money do I need to retire? Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. I kind of giggle because it seems like there's something new every week that comes out of this administration, whether it's, like I mentioned earlier, the tariff turmoil, the VIX volatility, and maybe the market just being mushy this week with all the uncertainty around what are these tariffs going to do to the economy. In fact, one I missed earlier, private payroll growth slowed sharply. I mean, like almost half of what they were expecting. I think they were expecting around 140,000 jobs added in February, and about 70,000 were all that was added. There's going to be an impact through all these changes. But we've got Danny Goolsby here, an advisor with Market Advisor Group Wichita. And this is a question that was asked by Anna on how much money she needs to retire. We get that question a lot, and there's more to it than that, right?
Oh, yeah, there's certainly more to it than that. So you're right. We get that question all the time because you'll hear marketing commercials on TV and on radio and internet saying, you need X amount of money to retire, and then you should be able to lay your head on the pillow and sleep well at night, and that you won't run out of money in retirement. But there's a whole lot more than just how much money do I need. It's like, all right, let's start with your burn rate. Do you know how much money it takes to run your household on a monthly basis in today's dollars? And Matt, I think you and I both are surprised a lot of times when we ask that question of folks, and they say, yeah, I have a pretty good idea. And I was like, okay, well then we have a little tool that we use a lot of times that will be a kind of a conversation starter on how much money is that. And once they go through that exercise, they find out a lot of times that they're spending quite a bit more than they realize. And so the first thing is you have to get a hold of how much money are you spending. And then number two, when you retire, it's a lot about lifestyle. When I say lifestyle, it's a lifestyle change because you've been doing life a certain way during your working years. And when you retire, most of the time you're not going to go home and watch paint dry. In other words, you're going to want to do something that costs money besides your overhead in retirement. So a lot of times we'll call that a paycheck for your overhead, your utilities, your car insurance, your food, your things like that. But then we'll talk about things that you want to do in retirement, we call that a play check. So whether it's travel, whatever kind of entertainment you want to do that usually costs money, we want to try to build into people's retirement income plans a play check.
Well, and I've heard you and other financial advisors mention that when you're retired, every day is Saturday.
That's right.
And most of the time, that's the day of the week where you spend the most money there. And yes, you can look at your household expenses and say, this is the bare minimum I need to get by. But who retires if they're, no one probably retires with the intention of just doing the bare minimum. They want to do things.
Yeah, like you said, every day is Saturday. How's that old saying go? Idle time is the devil's workshop. So, I find all kind of bargains when I'm not doing something that I should be doing. But so, yeah, you need to know what your burn rate is. Then you need to factor in, okay, look at inflation. How much has inflation been running at over the last 20 or 30 years? And what is the inflation going to do to the erosion of your money going forward? So you need to reasonably figure in how much inflation is going to be running. The question was in 2030, so that's 5 years from now. So I'd like to believe that in 5 years, inflation is not going to be that much crazier than it is now. But again, as you said earlier, we're in a time of uncertainty.
A lot of uncertainty, and people are anxious and maybe even frustrated that they don't have that clarity there. And 5 years. If they don't get government spending under control, inflation's not going to cool down, because if they pass the tax cuts, which again I'm in favor for, if they can't balance it with cuts to spending, then it's just going to drive more and more and more inflation.
Yeah, a lot of times if they pass the tax cuts, we could get deeper in debt before we get out of debt. And so
I've never been able to spend my way into prosperity.
How about that? Yeah. Well, they're trying.
They're trying.
Not doing it successfully, but they're trying. So then you have to worry about your burn rate. You have to worry about inflation, what that's doing. And then you mentioned taxes. Okay, so that's a big topic that's in the conversation today is all right, what's Congress going to do with this tax code we're currently in? And, I think it's maybe generally accepted that they're going to get something done, but that doesn't mean they're going to get something done. Just because they say it doesn't mean it's happening.
The House passed that one big, beautiful bill, but I think the Senate's going to snip it to pieces.
Yeah, I think, getting 535 people in Congress to agree is challenging at best.
They're people? You're a lot politer than I am.
Well, this is, as you said, you can't say that on the radio. But so yeah, what's your budget? What's your burn rate? What's inflation going to do? What's taxes going to do? Well, those are certainly a lot of unknowns. How much do I need to retire? I would ask you, Anna, how much money do you need to spend on a monthly basis? And then we can start projecting, all right, we can look at a inflation rate of 3 or 4 or 5%. Let's start with 2 or 3% historically, but then you can start saying, okay, well, if inflation does go higher, or 4 or 5, and even though 4 or 5, as I say it to the microphone, doesn't sound like it's that much different than 2 or 3, I promise you, over time, it's an enormous amount of difference on how much money you will have to spend.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people either turn to real estate or the stock market to try and keep pace with inflation. But just because inflation's roaring, we can have stagflation or anything like that. But I'm going to play Columbo here for a minute. I kind of think I'm seeing you're meaning we reverse engineer this. Is that what I'm getting?
You're getting that right. So you didn't bring your cigar into the studio.
No, they don't let me smoke in here.
There you go. But yeah, so you need to reverse engineer that to try to get your answer. When you hear these TV commercials or radio commercials that say, hey, you need this much money, I promise you there's a whole lot more to that than just, it's like saying your thumbprint is the same as the last 5 people in the door. No, your thumbprint is exactly your own individual thumbprint. Your set of circumstances that tell you how much money you need are going to drive how much that answer is.
And that's so true. And if you're listening out there and you've maybe asked yourself the question of how much do I need to retire? It's a bigger conversation than just that, because it depends on sometimes where you have all the money. If you have $1 million, is that $1 million in an IRA? Is that $1 million all in tax-free, a Roth IRA? Or is that $1 million in after-tax money? There's tax consequences that need to be brought to light and need to be discussed, and we do that going through our MAG report process. That's the retirement evaluation process, other risks and taxes. And if you are asking yourself, man, I don't like all this uncertainty, or I'm anxious, I'm worried about what's going on here, reach out and give us a call. You can schedule that 15-minute chat with us by phone by doing 833-MAG-REPORT. Or again, that phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can hop on over to the website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com. Well, again, stay tuned after the break. We'll be talking with Mark Benefiel on how we're seeing it's taking a little longer for the fact that Social Security and Medicare, when you submit those applications, it's going a little longer, maybe even 30, 45 days longer because of maybe the shakeup in Washington or just the reduction in staff. You won't want to miss me talking with Mark Benefiel about that after the break here. And then Alex Robinson, one of our estate planning attorneys, he'll be talking about the 3 outcomes from people that didn't have an estate plan in place. And if that's you, you might want to pay attention because you don't want this to happen to your loved ones. And then finally, rounding out the bottom of the show, we'll be talking again with Joshua Sikora, talking about what we're seeing from the tax planning we did back in October, November, and December for our clients, and what that's coming to and how that looks when you actually go file your taxes and the outcome there. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. And it's been a busy week this past week with Trump's address to Congress, the payroll numbers coming out. The growth is slowing sharply. And you heard Trump say in his speech, bear with me, there's going to be a little disturbance. I think he was meaning tariffs there, but you have to understand this little disturbance is probably more than just tariffs. And we're seeing this show up when we're helping people file for either their Medicare and or their Social Security. It's taken a little longer to do so. And we brought in Mark Benefiel, who you actually have a story to share with us about someone that's taking a little longer. And I mentioned this early in the program. If you're going to be retiring, you don't want to just say, hey, I retired yesterday. What do I need? This is something you need to plan a little bit in advance to make sure all these things get turned on So you're not left without income from Social Security, or you're not left without health care from Medicare, right? So what's really what's going on with you guys in the Medicare department, and you're seeing these changes?
Well, the changes we were going to talk about today, as far as how long it's taking people to enroll for Medicare. I want to be clear about this. This was not a problem that started with the new administration.
Okay, fair enough.
This problem is one that has been ongoing. And our concern obviously is that with the skinning out of some of the departments, and some for good reason, that it may take even a little bit longer. So people need to plan for that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to upset the whole apple cart, but people need to be aware of these changes. Like, for instance, right now, before the new administration, it was already taking 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer, once people file for their Part B, keeping in mind that it's a manual process done on paper via fax.
Oh, it's another one of those things where the government employees have to go down to the salt mines and get the physical files.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they go or what they do, but when somebody decides to not retire at 65 and defer and continue to work, or they're fortunate enough to be on a spouse's plan that is continuing to work, they have to once they decide to fully retire and go on Medicare, there's a couple of different forms that have to be filled out. One basically is them requesting Part B, which is done by paper. And then there's another form that they have to take to their employer. The employer signs and says, hey, this person has had insurance since 65, so they don't get hit with a penalty. That is a manual process done on paper, and that's the only way that, I shouldn't say it's the only way, but that's the way the majority of people do that. They get the employer to sign that, they bring it back to us, and we fax it in. Well, there's a reason why we fax it instead of mailing it or just taking it down to the Social Security office, because if we don't fax it, there's no way to hold anybody accountable that they actually received it.
So you guys get that fax confirmation sheet
Correct.
that said, we sent you this on this
Right.
date. You should have received it, instead of mailing it and having it.
Or you would think you could take it down there and hand it to somebody, which you can, but we've even had circumstances there where the powers to be at the Social Security office said they didn't have it, even though somebody took it and handed it to somebody. So we have to go through these extra steps. It was already taking 6 to 8 weeks already, depending on the part of the country you're in, or the efficiency of the particular office that you're working with. But the fallback has always been, well, they'll backdate it. They'll backdate it to when you signed up to paperwork. Well, that sounds great, but to somebody who's retiring and facing not having insurance, a lot of other questions, that's not necessarily gives people a really good feeling. And so what I wanted to get across today was that people really need to make sure that they're working with their advisor on the Medicare side, a good 90 days out from when they want to retire minimum, to make sure that everything's done in a fashion that's not going to cause undue stress.
Yeah, Danny, one of our financial advisors, was in here earlier, and he and I were talking at the break. He helped someone walk through the process of filing their Social Security, and that was almost 6-7 weeks ago. And that's not normal for it to take that long, or I say normal. That's not been my experience over the past couple of years for that to happen. And like you said, depends on sometimes the efficiency of who's working those cases. But one of the things I want to point out here is, if people are already on Social Security and they turn 65, do they get automatically enrolled in Medicare, or do they need to do some things there?
If you're already on Social Security, say you take it at 62, 63, 64, whatever that is, and when you hit 65, you are automatically enrolled for Medicare. That process happens automatically. Your card shows up in the mail, and you have Part A and Part B at that time. Now, you haven't made any elections on whether or not you want to have a supplement to go along with that. You haven't picked out a Part D prescription plan. You haven't went to an Advantage plan. And so people can still face penalties if they don't if they don't sign up for Part D when they need to. I just dealt with one of those yesterday. Poor woman she was 71, had never signed up.
Wow.
Now, fortunately, she has some VA benefits, and so we're able to get part of that taken care of, but there are also other parts that we cannot, and she's going to be faced with a penalty now, basically at 10% per year for the rest of her life.
And that's not what anyone wants. So, if people are already on Social Security and they get on to Medicare, like you said, it just automatically enrolls them, but maybe their spouse is covering on their health insurance, that's something they need to have help with unwinding the Part B and maybe just stick with the A.
Right. There's a lot of things that go into making a decision on whether or not when you should go with Part A when you turn 65. Should you or shouldn't you? Do you have a HSA account that would cause you problems if you decided to move forward? We see that frequently. Whether or not you're going to take Part B. And typically what has to happen is we do an analysis of, the spouse's plan and what you might be able to get under Medicare. We kind of analyze that and figure out what might be the best cost structure for you, but also give you the highest level of care. So it's not very cut and dried. And just because you turn 65 and maybe automatically get A and B set up, there's still more work to do.
There's a lot left to do. And guys, if you're thinking about this out there, if you're listening or watching and saying, man, Medicare sounds like an alphabet soup to me. I don't even know what to do. I'm frustrated by, I hear from my friends, I need to sign up for this date or there's a penalty, or, I'm totally confused on what's an Advantage plan and what's a supplement. Reach out and have a call with us. And you can do that by calling 833-MAG-REPORT, or that phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report, or you can hop on over to our website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com. Well, stay tuned. We'll be having a conversation with Alex Robinson with Eidelman Law Firm about 3 outcomes of people that had no estate plan. And if you don't have an estate plan, you won't want to miss this. So stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement. And you heard me mention earlier, there's a lot of things going on right now, and there's a lot of ripple effects. And how do you know that you won't be caught up in that? And speaking of how do you know if you won't be caught up in it, we've got Alex Robinson here, an estate planning attorney with Eidelman Law Firm. And you have 3 outcomes from people that had no estate plan in place. And I think the first one is about someone that didn't have a will and they died, which I'm told all the time, that's okay. The state of Kansas has one for you. That's sarcasm, by the way, tongue in cheek. But the thing here that complicated all this is he had children from a previous marriage. Isn't that right? Tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So I had a woman come in. Her husband died suddenly. They were in their 70s or 80s, but she'd said they were in pretty good health. He'd always said, we're going to get estate planning done. We're going to do this. And they just never found the time in their life to do it. And then he died from a heart attack. Wow. And she found out, well, he never did any estate planning. And so she then came in and saw me, and I had to tell her, hey, 50% goes to you, but then 50% goes to his children from a prior marriage.
Hold on here. 50% goes to the wife, even though they were legally married.
Correct.
But the fact is he had children from another marriage, and the surviving spouse is going to have to share that with the other kids.
That's correct.
I hope they all get along.
Well, they really didn't. And so that was a big part of the problem and what she was so worried about, because when they got married, they got married in the 70s, and they bought a house together in the 70s, and she wasn't on the house. So the house was in his estate only. So it really was a situation where the kids could have forced her out of the house by selling the house. Wow. They could have, taken 50% of everything. And so for about 6 months, her life was in limbo, even, on top of losing someone that she'd been with for 40 plus years.
That's terrible tragedy there. And the way to avoid that is to at least have a basic will, right? I mean, a will goes through probate, but the way they could have avoided that was to have at least a basic will. And nothing was there.
And nothing was there. And so it just caused her, untold grief for 6 months while we tried to get everything sorted out.
I bet it was even more than 6 months as far as the grief is concerned.
Oh, for sure.
What's another example here, another story of someone that didn't have an estate plan in place and it went terribly awry?
Well, the second one, she actually had an estate plan, but she didn't tell anyone about it. And so when she died, her sister, went to her house and looked through her things and found out, hey, I've been named executor of her will. Had no idea, didn't know what that meant, was, incredibly worried and concerned about, what do I do? Am I going to get in trouble? Or, what steps, can I even, go into her house? Can I, help bury her? What, am I going to get repaid for that? What are the things that I'm going to get in trouble for? And after we talked and walked her through everything, she came in crying because she was so stressed.
Sure.
And by the time we walked her through everything, it was just a relief for her.
Well, it's that uncertainty and the unknown that we're seeing a lot. That's got a lot of people, losing sleep, stressing out about things. And you don't have to. You can come here and have a conversation with us as a group. But this is something. You're right. I mean, what was the sister going to get in some trouble or anything, or has she not done anything too bad?
Yeah, she hadn't done anything too bad yet, and so it was a situation where she was able to kind of regroup and get her feet under her, and then we provided her with solutions on what to do and help her file the paperwork and do the things that needed to be done. But she didn't have to go through that nearly 3 weeks of stress, especially on top of her sister dying suddenly, because her sister had just never told her, hey, you're in my estate plan. Here's what that means. Go talk to an attorney.
And that's one of the things we talk about in a lot of our estate planning classes of you need to maybe let people know if you're going to make them these agents or representatives of you so they have an idea. Because here's the thing. Most people maybe haven't thought about this. Your estate plan really kicks into place when you're either unconscious or you don't have the cognitive ability to maybe make your own decisions, or you're dead. And you can't go say, hey, sister, this is where the will is. You're the executor. You need to have those conversations before all that happens.
Ahead of time. So, absolutely.
And then finally, what's the third kind of outcome from no estate plan or not the right estate plan in place?
Well, so the last one, we had someone who had an estate plan done. They had everything set up, or so they thought. But whoever drafted their documents didn't do a really great job and made it so that the house went to the wife for her lifetime, but they made it specific to the house that they were living in. And so when they sold that house, that house wasn't there anymore. And so she wasn't able to, again, this is kind of a scenario where we have to work through things and figure things out. And there's all this grief and stress and uncertainty on top of losing someone that you care about and you love. And so it really became this giant gnarled issue where we're having to interpret multiple documents and try to sort out how to help her as best we can.
Well, that's one of the good reasons why you guys at Eidelman Law Firm say it's really good to review that estate plan every 5 years, because if I'm understanding you correctly, in this estate plan, they specifically spelled out like 2309 bond or whatever. They spelled out the house. They didn't say the house that she's living in.
Correct.
And they sold that house and moved to another one. But a lot of times I see so many people do it with their estate plan. They think it's done, set it and forget it. It's not normally the case.
Correct. Yeah. And, part of that's on whoever drafted it to not do it the correct way. But part of it is on you as an individual to say, this is a living document. We need to look at it every couple of years and go see someone to make sure that everything is still doing what we want it to do.
And I see this with sometimes people that go online and they use those softwares, Legal Zing or the Susie do-it-yourself kits that they get mailed out there. And this circles back to what I just mentioned earlier. Your estate plan is going to kick in when you're not going to really have any input in it. And if it's not done right or not kept up to date, or if it's not working with the tax team, the advisory, the investment group, or all together, it leaves so much room for chaos.
Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know. And so you might think, oh, this is easy. I'm going to point and click my way through this and we're done. I don't know why this is such a big deal. And you've missed several areas where there's potential pitfalls and problems.
And it's well said. You don't know what you don't know. And if you guys are out there listening or watching and you're saying, well, I don't know if my estate plan's right, or I don't even know if it's still good anymore, it's older than 5 years, reach out and have a conversation with us at 833-MAG-REPORT. That phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can go over to our website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com. Well, stay tuned. Rounding out the end of the show, we'll be talking with Joshua Sikora about what we're seeing with the outcomes of the people we did tax planning last quarter, October, November, and December, and what's coming to fruition now when we're actually filing the tax return. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. We've got Joshua Sikora, CPA here. He's our lead tax advisor. You watched the president's address this week, right?
I did.
Did you hear him say there's going to be a little disturbance? A little disturbance. I think he was meaning with the tariffs and maybe the economy, but that really could be expanded out to Social Security, Medicare, and maybe even taxes, right?
Yeah. So little's all about perception, right? And we're going to see these disruptions pop up from place to place. I think he was talking about tariffs, but like you were talking about Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, those are all in the crosshairs too. And while it might be a little disruption in those services, I think the people who are going to feel those disruptions, it's not going to feel like a little situation. But that's where planning comes into place, right?
You said it's all relative, and there can be so many things there. But you're here to talk to us about how you're seeing tax planning really come to fruition here. We do the tax planning with our clients in October, November, and December. Figure out what moves they need to make before the end of the year. That'll be really important this year as the tax code changes.
Yep.
But now you're not in tax planning season. Now you're in tax preparation return season.
That's right.
And you're seeing that tax plan now come to fruition. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So I mean, not every client I deal with is someone who's working with you or the other financial advisors, and so it's very telling when the difference between the two. So when I'm working with just a random person, when we talk about the tax return, we talk about it in comparison to how it compared to the 23 tax return. And those people come in and they're a little more tense about it, and they're hoping it comes out okay. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Things change during the course of the year, and they're just hoping with bated breath that it all turns out okay. Whereas when I'm working with the clients who we've done that tax planning with, it's really kind of anticlimactic because we've already talked through whatever's going to happen. We've discussed what needs to happen to get to the answer they want. We've talked about intentionally doing things to get to some kind of answer, making something happen. So then the question just is, how close are we to that plan? We're usually pretty close. But sometimes things pop up that weren't accounted for in the plan, and I mean that's always different.
Or maybe they received inheritance last minute, or there can be a little bit of variables.
Yeah.
But the important part here is I want to revisit this because you said it really quick. I want to make sure this gets with people. You work with people that don't work with us on the advisory group side.
Yeah. I mean, I've got clients that just come see me for tax return time, and that's fine.
Sure, but it's really better to make sure they're working with their tax advisor, with their financial advisor, and also doing that tax planning before the end of the year. Because like you mentioned, there gets to be a lot of anxiety or uncertainty around, oh my gosh, am I going to owe something big? Or, oh my gosh, did I pay enough in? Or, oh my gosh, all the uncertainty.
Am I getting the refund I need to pay for X, Y, and Z? People use that, for whatever. And there's just hoping and praying it all pans out like they need it to.
But that's a really, what I'm hearing is there's a big distinction between people that are help using us to get help for their plan, and there's people that are flying by the seat of their shorts, and that's the polite way to say that.
That's right. It's the spring of deception here, so maybe it's shorts, maybe it's pants. I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, and you can just tell it in their demeanor when they come in, because the people who haven't done that planning, they don't know what's coming down the road. Whereas the people who have done that plan, assuming they remember the plan we put together. I mean, people have slept a time or two since then, but they should know what the expected outcome is. So then the question just becomes, how close did we get? What surprises popped up we weren't accounting for? And then how close did we hit that plan? Because it's also a recursive process, right? So we got the plan.
That's a $10 word.
That is
a recursive process?
Yeah. So whatever we do this time, we use those results to make it better for the next time we do the plan.
There you go. We're fine tuning there.
Yeah, that's right. We fine tune it. We dial it in. So this time, each time we do it, we get more and more accurate. That's right.
And there can be a lot of variables. If someone's still working, that can be a variable. We try and push them a little deeper into tax planning season, that first, second week of December, because the income can fluctuate.
That's right.
But people that are living on a fixed income, we start them in kind of October. But this tax planning, the big thing I want to get across to people is it eliminates a lot of the uncertainty. It reduces a lot of the anxiety. And if people don't have that, then they're just left to have the uncertainty, anxiety all on their own.
That's right. And so we wait till later in the year to do it for two reasons. One, is that uncertainty that people have in their own lives, right? Whether it's wages, whether it's, what's coming in. But then, and this is going to be the bigger piece as we move through this year and next year, what is tax law going to look like? And there's a lot of uncertainty there, more so than it has been in probably the last 5 years or so, of what's tax law going to look like. So let's wait till as late as possible so we know what that's going to look like.
And I have the word roulette in your notes. I mean, was that something we were going to incorporate in here as far as...
Yeah. So, I mean, when you come in, you're just kind of, where is it going to be? Where's it going to fall? Where's it going to fall? And then are your chips on that spot or not?
Okay, there's the roulette analogy. Yep. Well, guys, if you're listening or watching out there and you're thinking, yeah, every time I go to file my taxes, there's always a surprise, or I really don't know what's going on, reach out and give us a call at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or that phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can head over to our website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com. But the big thing we want to get across to you guys is there's two different things. There's tax preparation and there's tax planning. And if you're not getting the tax planning with your tax preparation, you're probably overlooking some things. And I hope they eliminate this taxation on Social Security, but that's the one that gets a lot of people off guard. We talk about that in our classes.
We talk about it all the time.
And I hope they eliminate it. I wouldn't say cautiously optimistic, but I'm optimistic that something will happen. But don't get caught up in these tax traps, and don't be a Monday morning quarterback and say, well, we should have did this. Know what's happening before it. We're outside of football season. I shouldn't have used that.
That works. It works.
Well, that's all the time we have this week. We'll see you next week.
Unless otherwise indicated, all client names have been changed to protect their identities. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Edelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in this show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. All rights reserved.